Okay, I think we have a good number of people online, so let's get started. So firstly, welcome to the TaroWorks customer sharing session about training field staff. I'm Elaine Chang. I'm the manager for global market development at TaroWorks, and I think I know most of you on the call. The purpose of these customer sharing sessions is for our current TaroWorks users to share the great work that they're doing and highlight something interesting about their deployment with the others in the TaroWorks community. So today we're trying out a new panel format and hearing from two TaroWorks users. I think it's interesting because they have slightly different approaches to training their field staff. And so it'd be interesting for you all to hear kind of the spectrum of options. So we'll be hearing from Andrew Zacharias. He's the Director for Monitoring and Evaluation at Trees for the Future, and Ross Jacks, the Private Sector Coordinator at Tetra Tech. So I have a few housekeeping items to review. And while I do that, I'm going to open a poll so we can gauge what challenges people are facing around training field staff. Let me start that. Okay, so put in your answers and let's go over some housekeeping rules. So we are recording this session. Just keep that in mind. Everybody is on mute automatically. So if you have a question, please type it into the little window. And when there's a good chance to ask it, I'll unmute you. So be prepared to ask it in person. And I'll pause after the first presentation in case there are any clarifying questions. But otherwise, we'll plan to answer all of the questions, or the majority of the questions, at the end after both of the approaches have been presented. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll. Share the results here. We can see that. Okay, so it looks like the majority of people do not have people to do the training, with another big chunk of participants saying that the staff is not familiar with mobile technology and they're also spread out across different regions. Okay. That's great, and hopefully these presentations will kind of talk about what they've done to overcome these. Okay, so let me now switch it over to Andrew to take it away.
Let's see. Am I on now?
I think so.
I think so. Y'all can you all see my screen? Let's see, can you see the presentation I have in front here?
I wonder if I'll try it now.
Oh wait, there we go.
I can see it now.
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, thank you very much, Elaine. My name is Andrew Zacharias. I'm the Director of Monitoring and Evaluation at Trees for the Future. We've been using TaroWorks now for just over a year, and I'm happy to be here today to share with you my experiences with the software and also with the aspects of training up our field staff, which we've done a few times over the past maybe 14 months. Let me find my cursor. There we go. Just a brief introduction to who we are at Trees. We are an organization that is dedicated to planting trees with rural communities in the developing world to enable them to restore their environment, grow more food, and build a sustainable future. We work with smallholder farmers to create intensively managed agroforestry systems that utilize vertical layers to produce food and marketable products, and we're calling these forest gardens. We are active in 7 countries across Africa. And we have 15 active project locations in those countries. So you can kind of see that we're kind of focusing on East Africa, Cameroon, and in West Africa we have Senegal and Mali that are currently active. We use TaroWorks to as a platform for a lot of our reporting activities throughout the year. We use it to record and organize a variety of metrics onto our Salesforce database. These things include, but aren't limited to, things like land use change, planting habits, number of trees that we're planting across the globe, as well as other aspects of land use, such as like food access, food security, crop varieties being planted, as well as just general local group information, such as location and general demographics. In 2014, we adopted TaroWorks to help us with our reporting. And in April, we had our first rollout in East Africa. So we had 17 field staff coming from Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and Burundi to our regional office in Moshi, Tanzania. And we spent a couple of days going over a number of different aspects of use for these devices. This includes just the general hardware usage and maintenance. I see that a lot of people who responded to the poll were having issues with using devices. So I'll be happy to speak a little bit about that. General uses and maintenance of the TaroWorks software, as well as the data collection process and techniques specific for our organization, as well as the reporting timelines. The training format that we did kind of broke it up into two different sections. One could be described as theory, and the other could be described as practicals. The theory took about 3 hours, and what it was just a PowerPoint presentation which explained to the field staff what data we're collecting and why we're going after that data. I think that this was very beneficial for our staff because it helped them understand the survey questions' intents and ultimate purposes. So if they had questions about what a survey question was trying to accomplish, we could then relate it back to our theory discussion and talk about what the end goal of that question was intended for. This was supplemented with practicals. It was about 3 hours in the classroom with an additional 1.5 hours plus in the field working with real participants. The practicals consisted mostly of role-playing activities. These role-playing activities in 2014 were very structured scenarios to kind of help the technician understand when would be the appropriate time to use the appropriate job available to them. And last year when we did this, it was very structured, so we could expect certain answers coming back from these scenarios. So if there was what we did was we paired them up into twos, and one person assumed the role of the Trees for the Future technician, and the other person assumed the role of the participant farmer. And they would go through the jobs in the appropriate scenarios, and they would complete all of these questions. And so for last year, we had a very structured response script almost, so we could go back in later on and look at the answers that were coming back from these activities and check the accuracy of these responses. This is something that we changed for this year, and I can go into more detail on that later on when we talk about it, but just something to note that we're kind of getting away from the whole structured scenario aspect of it. This was, like I said earlier, was also supplemented with some field work, going out in the field and doing these mock jobs with participant farmers. This was really helpful because it kind of opened up the possibility for responses that might have been outside the realm of role playing for our technicians during the training. But all in all, these practicals were excellent. Really enjoyed the responses that we got from the role-playing activities and the benefits that they brought. One of the main benefits was that gave experience in navigating a possibly new technology. For some of our technicians, they've already been exposed to smartphones before, but it's certainly not something that one should assume when going into this situation. A lot of people, especially in the developing countries, have never come across this. So it's really useful not only to teach them how to navigate through TaroWorks, but also just through the basic functions of the phone. And the best way that I've found to do that is just to give them experience messing around with it, playing with the buttons, trying to guide them to certain areas and to complete certain tasks. And I think that the role playing has really provided a great avenue to do that. As I said, it also is great for identifying the correct surveys to access at the appropriate during the appropriate situations, and also dealing with the participant farmers when out in the field doing these activities. In addition to that, we'll talk briefly about the whole distance training. Not everyone from the East Africa organization was able to attend our meeting in April of last year. So I made sure to make it very clear to those who were in attendance that it was very important for them to master these skills and feel comfortable doing them, not only on their own, but to act as a trainer for their country staff for when they return home. This was something that they embraced very quickly and very excited to do, and we've seen a lot of success from it. We also provided ongoing assistance in the form of technical support, whether that is mechanical support for the phone, kind of technological support on that side, but also helping them understand the appropriate times to access the correct jobs and complete them based on the reporting guidelines for the year. The benefit of doing this distance training is it increases the training event's impact by including more field staff, including those people who weren't able to attend. It also increases the effectiveness of the training by improving the coordination of activities after everybody goes back to their posts. A few lessons that we learned from the 2014 rollout was that when doing this again, we should definitely reserve more time prior to the training for device setup, and that we should be, when purchasing devices, we're to be sure that they are compatible with the requirements listed on the TaroWorks website. We had an issue, and this is something that you can double check all the time, but when purchasing them in the developing country, it's sometimes you get like a mixed bag of goods. And so we had some devices, of like the 20 that we got, we had maybe 15 that were exactly what we ordered, and then 15 that were, the operating system was below what was acceptable by the TaroWorks program. So we had to kind of teach ourselves how to flash the devices and update it, and that certainly took a lot of time. And so moving forward, we were certainly making sure to have that extra padded time before the training, make sure all the devices are up and ready to go in a comfortable fashion. We also realized that there are going to be hiccups when rolling out this technology, but this is certainly something that should avoid trying to fix during the actual deployment of the phones and the training packages. And this is very specific to when you're in the classroom and you come across a technical issue. Certainly explain the issue to the group and explain why it's not possible to continue along this avenue, and if possible, move on to the next activity. The time that you have there is finite, and it's often the best option to make the necessary adjustments like after or between sessions instead of jumping in and possibly adding to the confusion of fixing something having to go wrong as we had in 2014. Very, very slight, but that's something I wanted to take note of. Another thing that we learned, that there exists a varying degree of technological aptitude amongst the participants. Generally speaking, they're very excited to adopt the new technologies and practices, but there is an upper limit to the level of adoption that they can take in the short amount of time that you have to do the training in. So when you're there and you're training with people, I would make sure to keep the language very simple and very clear. And to avoid unnecessarily lengthy technical explanations about something. But at the same time, you want to keep yourself open with those individuals who have inquiring minds and who do show the ability to kind of like grasp these higher level concepts of technology, of programming, of how data flows throughout a database. And the last thing that we learned is role-playing was a highly effective strategy for training, and I recommend its use whenever possible. And so for 2015, we had another rollout. We've developed a new M&D plan for this year. This includes new surveys, new timelines. Some of the new metrics that we include were captured in surveys developed by USAID and then tweaked for our own purposes. It also includes the trees technical data form, which was similar to the server we were using last year, but really beefed out for this year. So it did require training in Cameroon and Senegal, as well as kind of like a retraining for some of our guys in East Africa who were already familiar with TaroWorks for the most part. Most of them were, but because of all these new metrics and new surveys, it was necessary to have a training with them as well. So we wrapped that up just a few weeks ago, and we had a really great time doing it. And I just want to go over a few things that how we went about with that training and some of the things we learned and some things we might consider doing for next time. So again, we started with theory and then moved into practicals. The theory we spent a little less time on this time around, about 2 hours per training. And it was similar to the 2014 training that we were covering, what data we were interested in collecting and why we're doing it. This was captured in our logical framework that we had on tap to describe what metrics we were choosing for our surveys. And we were able to also review the TaroWorks jobs to the field staff to know, what surveys are included, what jobs, and when to complete these jobs when they're appropriate. The practicals themselves, they took about 4 hours. I'll talk about that later. This was utilizing the role-playing methodologies that we used last year. It's a combination of in-classroom activities as well as field-based activities with participant farmers. Like I said earlier, this year we use a much less structured question-answer format. It is mostly focusing more on the mechanics of accessing and navigating TaroWorks jobs and selecting the correct job for the correct situation. So instead of expecting people to input the information accurately, we relied on them to kind of role play their way through the activities and provide the answers based on just their own experiences in dealing with farmers. And I think this was really useful because it kind of took away from the question-answer format and more made into a conversation, while also providing a great platform for them to access the devices and navigate through it, and navigate through the software as well. And I think that is probably the most beneficial activity that they can do to get an understanding for the phone and feel comfortable with it for when they return to the field and they're off on their own doing this. This also led to some great in-depth discussion of survey questions and what the intent of those questions were. There can always exist, a level of language barrier, whether the surveys are translated directly into the local dialect or whether that translation is going to go on at the technician level. It's something that should be discussed in training to make sure that everybody is aware of what the jobs are out there to accomplish and the best way to go about asking these questions and getting the answers for them. A few lessons that we learned from this year is that, hey, device setup gets easier with more practice. This year was a lot smoother than it was last year due to just the experiences learned. All the rocky parts of the road were smoothed out this year, which is great. The role-playing activities led to some great conversations, like I said earlier. You should be aware of those language barriers and translation issues and work with your field staff to overcome them. I would reserve more time in the future for these similar discussions and also give them additional practice time, more role-playing access with the phones. And another aspect that we added to the training this year was the idea of ethics. And we had some great feedback from our field staff about that aspect of it. In the future, I would love to develop this out a little more and include into our training material with hopes that it would improve the staff participant discourse, understanding, having the participant understand why we're asking these questions, how it affects them, and sometimes how it doesn't affect them. Thank you very much for your time. I'm really happy to share my experiences with you guys. And I think when we open the floor for Q&A, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have for me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Andrew. That was really interesting. Let me pause here for a second and see if there's any kind of clarifying questions that we can address. So if you have a question, type it in or raise your hand. Okay. Doesn't look like there's anything yet. Okay, in that
Okay.
case, let's switch it over to you, Ross. Are you
Okay. Should I
on?
pass it to Ross?
Um,
Okay.
I think Ross will just be speaking, so we can
Oh, okay.
probably keep it. Or and maybe we can pass it back to me.
Yeah, I'll pass it.
And then Ross, go for it.
For sure. Thanks, Elaine. It's a pleasure to have a chance to relate our experience, everybody, and thanks for everybody taking time out to join. Um, I'm working with the we use TaroWorks with the IFACS, the Indonesia Forest and Climate Support Project, in the last year. And this project is it expands across 7 landscapes from the very west of Indonesia, in Aceh, to the very east in Papua, and it is covering about the remit is to bring about 3 million hectares of forest under better management, and also in the case of that working in 12 districts, which are the equivalent of, I would say, large counties in the USA, and working with over 12,000 households. So it's a very widespread and a project that also reaches into very remote and difficult to access parts of Indonesia, road and transport wise, but telecommunications is still quite a, they're investing heavily. So the idea was that instead of us trying introduce a technology that would allow us to collect information, hopefully made in better contact with the field staff um, throughout these remote areas where people are monitoring not only uh, our livelihood activities with 12,000 households, but also monitoring condition of the forest, monitoring biodiversity, etc. So that's why we chose to go with the TaroWorks platform to allow us to do that. And the training, because we're implementing a lot of our activities not directly, but through partners, I chose to ask Grameen Foundation to help us with the training and the capacity building by bringing in a trainer, one of the key people from East Africa, to do that. And the reason is that though I find it rather user friendly to you, that this is going to be a new experience not only for the enumerators handling it, but also for our partner, who is a local it's a nonprofit or foundation called Yayasan Sahabat Cipta that we have been working with for some time, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to use the technology and use to collect data to help do better field force management for the project, but also for to build capacity and introduce it to them in their organization that maybe they can adopt it throughout their activities in Indonesia. Um, and so also because their activities were quite remote from where we were operating, we wanted to have very to deal with a lot of issues and a lot of questions they had on the moment. So that's why I wanted to bring in someone from TaroWorks to conduct that training. The deployment this happened over the course of about the last quarter of 2014. Our immediate task was we were going to do an inline survey of activities that we were dealing with about 2,400 households, cocoa farmers who lived on the forest margins in Aceh, and we wanted to take that opportunity to use that inline survey as a learning opportunity for the enumerators and also for Yayasan Sahabat Cipta to do this. And I was very pleased because we had been in contact a lot with Grameen Foundation about setting this up, and had gone through a lot of what the initial requirements were and what the design of the inline survey would be and how we would adapt that to the technical interface. And all in all, that went very smoothly, and it led to a very successful deployment of the survey instrument. I think we were able to meet our timelines very well when doing that. We had about 12 or 14 enumerators who had maybe used a smartphone before, but definitely never used an application like this. And the training was over the course of 2 or 3 days, and it was even translated. So I'm doing sequential translation into the training. And as Andrew said, and I agree with him, doing role plays or having them the opportunity to use the device in their hands and sample it with each other or in a role play model or test it on some people in the field was key to getting them to get the confidence and understand, what to do, or if any conditions or any issues arose while they're doing the survey. And I was surprised. We'd done the training over a course of, I think, 1 weekend or 3 days of 1 week. And we were already ready to deploy the survey and have these enumerators go out the following week to, and again, they're all under a partner organization to do that. And the experience that we had in deploying this was that one of the things that, one of the difficulties that we had in this particular example was the deploying of the survey, deploying of the technology went pretty smoothly, I think, front. The issue we had is we were doing this halfway through at the tail end of a project, and we had a lot of the systems that were even built around a survey of paper, and the data collection and the analysis was done as such. And switching it over to the back end being Salesforce.com or a relationship database was probably the most challenging part that we had to deal with. And looking back, definitely going into any activity, going into any system, having the technology as part of the design to begin with would have been key. Another one is that I think that when working through a partner, when trying to build up capacity of a local partner or an organization to do this in the field, it's important that they, it's important that they understand the technology and and the value it may have for them. In this case, I think one of the issues we have is that we brought the technology to our partner. They're very welcoming of it. They're happy to try out something new. But at the initial leadership of it, didn't right understand how it was going to work and what and how to apply it to the organization. So that took some education and some hard work, I think, that way to convince them that this could be integral, not only to our project they're working on, but their entire monitoring and evaluation needs or project management needs can be integrated there across all their projects. So we had I cannot stress one of the lessons learned, as I agreed to the previous presentation, is don't wait to fix the survey at the time that's just being deployed. That's very important to have that already in place. And to have the idea with this technology, it's great to start out from the beginning with this technology in place, or at least that's part of the planning from the very beginning. The overall result from this experience was outstanding. One of the most key things is that the data was coming in so much quicker to our partner, and they're able to process it so much quicker that they were, what they had seen, before 2 or 3 weeks of lag time, all the additional labor and time to transcribe it from paper into digital. They saw the immediate value in not having to do that, and labor savings and also transcription errors. And happy to say that now they have adopted it to other projects that are not associated with, they're beyond what we were doing with USAID IFACs. And I think that was the greatest, what our objective was, and we were most happy to see that, is that Yayasan Sabah Cipta has taken this on and is now deploying it themselves throughout other areas of Indonesia. So Elaine, I'll leave it there for now, and I'll be happy to ask any questions on this.
Great, thanks a lot, Ross. Okay, so let me switch back just so everyone gets a sense of who's on the call. While I do that, please start typing your questions in. I think there are a lot of great learnings from these two examples. And I think speaking to a lot of you, you're grappling with a lot of the same issues. So it would be great if you want to just pick their brain about something, ask them a question about their deployment. Please go ahead and start asking those. Share my screen here. Okay, hopefully you can all see that. Let's see. Tom, see your hand up. Let me unmute you. Tom, did you have a question? Hello, Tom. Okay, Tom, if you want to just put your question into the box there, I'll get to it. Let me move on to Kevin. Let's see. Kevin, if you could just give a brief introduction of who you are and your organization.
Sure. Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Excellent. So my name is Kevin Ziegler. I'm a special projects manager at TechnoServe. We recently did a large deployment of TaroWorks and Salesforce to a regional database for monitoring and evaluation in Latin America, specifically for agriculture products in the coffee, cocoa, and dairy sectors. And one of the issues, or I guess one of the things that we're trying to grapple with now is how to best handle sync errors in the field. So either your field staff, we use a lot of barcodes, so either the field staff typed in something wrong, typed in an ID, scanned the wrong barcode, a number of different reasons of why we get sync errors. But I just wondered if you guys had run into something similar, and if so, how best you found to handle that while field staff are kind of in these remote areas where there is no access to call back to HQ to ask how to resolve the issue.
Sure, I'd be happy to speak a little bit to that. Am I unmuted?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, great, fantastic. Yeah, hi there, Kevin. From my experience, there's a number of things we can do. Maybe not to fix the problem, but to limit the amount of damage that it can do. I've had some problems with people coming back from trips to the field, and they come back with all this information, and they want to sync it at the same time, and they come across an error that might throw a wrench into their plans to do that, and they end up losing a lot of information that way. There's a limited amount of stuff we can do to fix that issue. One thing that we did was we purchased a license to TeamViewer with the mobile license, so we'll be able to, in the future, if we have this problem, jump on into the phone and see exactly what files are on there, and perhaps interface with the TaroWorks team to resolve any issues and hopefully recover data. In order to kind of mitigate the amount of damage that can do, I've always encouraged our staff to utilize the syncing option whenever possible. If they're in the field and they have a data connection, it's always preferable to sync the data at that point. That way, if we come across an issue when syncing one piece of information, one survey, then we can pinpoint there's a problem there and hopefully not have it affect the other data on the phone. I hope that answers part of your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd actually looked into the TeamViewer thing as well. Were you guys able, so is that licensing per phone or is that?
No, it's an unlimited amount of license for the phones, but there is a limited amount of workstations available. So we
Ah,
got
okay.
2 workstations.
Great, thank you.
It's a one-time fee, and you can just keep using it.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
Great, thanks. Let's see. There was also another question about devices that you were using, and if you had run into any hardware-specific issues. I would also add on to that, can you maybe explain for both of you, how did you decide on those devices for your enumerators? Maybe, Andrew, can we start with you?
Absolutely. Yeah. For the first round in 2014, when we rolled this out, we were using the Samsung Mini. Um, because it was a phone that was available immediately, and it had a good infrastructural integrity to it. You could bang it around and not worry about it breaking. There were some issues with it that we kind of corrected for in the future. One of them would be the size of the screen. We would prefer something a little larger in order to read the survey and navigate it more smoothly. And also the keypad was rather small on these devices. Moving forward, we went with the what was it? The Samsung Ace, I think, which is maybe like a step up from the Mini this year. It's got a better camera on it, 5 megapixel. The screen's bigger than the Mini. The keyboard size is still an issue, and so moving forward, another lesson that we learned, I should have mentioned earlier, would be the device selection and uh, depending on your applications and your ability to travel with the device, I would certainly recommend something larger if you had the choice between larger or smaller. Something the size of even a tablet. The prices are really coming down on those, and I would certainly explore those avenues. Just because the issue of data entry becomes exponentially more easier.
Hmm. Yeah, great. Yeah, we also we're in communication quite a bit with Grameen Foundation about the requirements for the app, and based upon that and its functions, and did our selection based upon those what was needed to function well and provide all the services. The Samsung ended up being a competitive price. We went with a tablet, smaller tablet, but something still the same concern. Saw that the larger screen was a lot more had a lot more advantages for reading and for entering data. Recommend at least a 7-inch tablet, not larger.
Great, that's really interesting. Okay, Tom, let me try you again here. Hi, Tom. Tom, I think we can hear there's some sort of background noise. Okay. Sorry, Tom, I don't really understand your question. So let me try to get that answered for you after, if we're able to connect. Okay, I have another question then. Who is assisting in your technical support? I think, Andrew, you had mentioned that there was someone. That is that you, or do you have a dedicated person in each of these countries that's providing this?
We wear a lot of hats at the organization, and I certainly provide the lead on technical support coming from HQ. That being said, within the countries, we do have some people identified as uh, successful adopters of the software, of the technology, and we try to incorporate their expertise along the way as much as possible. But usually it does end up coming up the ladder to me. Yeah.
Okay. Thomas Okamura, I'm going to unmute you. If you could just please introduce yourself first and then ask your question.
Hello?
Hi. Hi, Thomas.
Hi. I had a question. I had interest in going to the rural areas of the Philippines. I live in the Philippines right now, and electricity is really high. A lot of people don't realize what's happening on the ground or what the demand is from the community. And I really have interest in bringing this kind of platform there and doing data collecting, but has there been any issues or conflict of interest of, or what was your method of going in and talking with the regional authorities or making sure that they understand they're on the same page of what you're trying to do? Yeah, I just feel like there might be confidential information that they don't want anyone snooping around, or if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Sure.
sure, Tom. It's always raises some suspicion if people outside the community come in and start asking questions, probing questions about without the authorities knowing what it's about, especially if they're bringing in some kind of fancy technology and doing it there. Um, adds even more element of that. So, I mean, in our case, let's say that we were, our survey needs were part of a long-standing project that had been relationships in the villages that with local authorities well acquainted with us. But definitely, if you're, and I don't know what the nature of your information collection needs are, but there would definitely need to be someone in the local administration aware, at least aware, cognizant of what you're trying to do and objectives before I go in and do that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Ross. I want to echo those sentiments. I would say that we would rely primarily on a relationship with the communities in which we work and the community members with whom we work in order to kind of help maybe administrative people from the government or interested community members understand what it is that we're doing and what the technology that we're introducing is going to accomplish. In the African context, a lot of this is just explaining to the people that we're using this technology to create a story. We're just having a conversation, and we're using this for our organization to better understand the realities of life on the ground and the impact of our program in order to provide a better service.
Gordon, did you have something to add here?
Yes. Hi. So this is Gordon from TaroWorks. I'm the technical account manager. So a quick tactical point: you definitely want to check the regulations as well and the conditions of your visa entry. Like for example, in certain countries, if you do research, you have certain rules about what you publish, or you need to submit a copy to the government. Some government are more open than the others, so it's definitely something to talk with your office about to see what's the relationship with. The best ones are the ones that piggyback on government drive, like the one here in Jakarta. They're looking at checking flood levels and seeing who needs help, and they are rolling out mobile data collection as well. And as a result, they have a very good collaboration with NGOs and the civil society partners. So that's one tactical point. On the topic of tactical points, I just want to add in some notes. A lot of you who uses Salesforce uses Sandbox for testing, and you may be tempted to do training using Salesforce sandboxes. This is strongly discouraged for the reason that sandboxes have there's some limitations on it, mainly the connection time and how many sync it can be done. So you may find yourself cut off in the middle of training. So that's just one quick pointer I want to add.
Great, that's a good point. Okay, I do have one more poll question here, so let me open that up while I ask another question. Okay, so I think you can all see that now, but it's the question is, how do you plan to train your field staff going forward? Okay, and then my question is, what are some things that you look for in a trainer? It sounds like they have a lot of hats. They need to be, you know, aware of the technology part of it, but also the survey part of it. So just curious, Andrew and Ross, what you were looking for, and whether you think there's parts of the job description that you would like to share with people.
Andrew, you want to go ahead first?
Yeah, actually, could you repeat the question? I'm not quite clear on it.
Yeah, I guess like what are the right functions that a trainer should have? Like, what do you think are the most effective traits or skills as people think
Okay.
about their trainer?
Absolutely. I would say first and foremost would be the ability to be there locally. This is something that needs to be done in person, whether it's one-on-one or one on a group. The ability to travel and be at the training location is a must. Second off, the ideal trainer would have to be able to wear a variety of hats, not only understand the ins and outs of the technical part of how TaroWorks operates and how it's tied into Salesforce and the survey construction methodologies, and all these nuances of the program, but also be able to communicate that in a very simple way to people who may not have a high level of technological aptitude. So to be able to bounce around and wear those different hats is a very good quality for a trainer.
And I'd also add to that is that, given that it means people are being trained to use the technology for a job function, which they may already be part of doing with their surveying team, field staff interacting with communities, farmers, health workers all the time. The knowledge of it's a stretch, but the person may take the effort to understand what is the underlying context and work needed that this technology is supposed to address. Is it important also to have that element of context?
Absolutely, I agree.
Great. Let me close the poll here.